The chandelier caught fire first. Not real fire, just light. Morning sun slicing through the arched windows of the Ashford Grand's ballroom and igniting every crystal pendant like a constellation pulled down from heaven. Marcus Cole stood beneath it, suit jacket draped over one arm, watching 500 people fill the restored lobby. Their voices rose in waves, laughter and awe blending into something that felt like vindication. He'd spent 6 months imagining this moment, but none of those imaginings had prepared him for the weight of it. Maya tugged his sleeve. 7 years old, gap-toothed smile bright against her Sunday dress. She held the ceremonial scissors in both hands, gold ribbon looped between the blades. "Ready, Daddy?" He knelt beside her, steadied her grip. The cameras flashed, a dozen at once, turning the moment into something eternal before it had even happened. Beyond the red ribbon stretched the lobby they'd rebuilt, marble floors polished to mirrors, crown molding restored to its 1912 glory, walls that had witnessed segregation now bearing plaques that told the truth about it. Rebecca Thompson stepped to the microphone, her voice carrying the kind of authority that came from 60 years of living history. Local historian, community organizer, the woman who'd kept files in her basement when everyone else wanted to forget. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who restored not just this building, but 73 years of dignity. Applause erupted. Marcus felt it in his chest, a physical thing. He guided Maya's hands, the scissors closing, the ribbon falling in 2 neat halves. The crowd surged forward. Maya squealed as he lifted her, her arms wrapping around his neck. "We did it, baby." She pulled back to look at him. "No, Daddy, you did it." Across the room, near the Heritage exhibit entrance, Jonathan Ashford stood frozen. Silver hair, marble face, eyes that had once looked at Marcus like he was pollution in human form. Now those eyes held something else. Shock, maybe. Humiliation, certainly. The recognition that the man he'd dismissed 6 months ago had just rewritten the ending. Marcus met his gaze, held it. No triumph in his expression, no gloating, just the quiet certainty of a man who'd finished what his grandfather started. The frame froze. Jonathan's face, Marcus's calm, Maya's joy, suspended in air. But 6 months ago, none of them knew his name. The alarm clock shattered the silence at 5:43, 6 minutes before Marcus needed it to. He slapped the button anyway, habit stronger than math, and lay in the dark, listening to the building wake around him. Pipes groaned. Someone's television murmured through the walls. Atlanta morning traffic already building on the street below. He swung his legs out of bed, feet finding cold hardwood. The apartment was small, 2 bedrooms above a hardware store on the edge of a neighborhood that couldn't decide if it was gentrifying or dying. Bills covered the kitchen table in overlapping layers. He didn't look at them. Looking didn't change the numbers. Coffee first. Black, bitter, strong enough to strip paint. He made it in the same Mr. Coffee that Elena had bought at a yard sale 9 years ago, back when they were just married and poor felt temporary. The machine gurgled and hissed, filling the kitchen with the only smell that made 5:49 in the morning feel survivable. Elena died 4 years ago. Cancer. Left him with Maya and $60,000 in medical debt that the bankruptcy hadn't quite erased. He pulled the top envelope from the pile. Rent notice, 3rd one this month. $847 due 6 days ago. Late fee already applied. He set it aside, reached for the next one. Electric bill. School supply list from Maya's teacher. Crayons, glue sticks, poster board, the kinds of things that cost $3 each and added up to impossible. His phone showed the bank balance without him asking. $62.17. Payday was Friday. Rent was due yesterday. The math didn't work. It hadn't worked in 4 years. Maya's door creaked open. She padded out in her frozen pajamas, hair a magnificent disaster, rubbing sleep from her eyes. "Morning, baby." She climbed into his lap without asking, settled against his chest like she belonged there. She smelled like kid shampoo and the grape juice she'd spilled on her sheets last week. "Do we have pancakes?" "We have cereal." "The good kind?" "The kind that's on sale." She accepted this without complaint. That was Maya, 7 years old and already understanding that some questions didn't have better answers. He poured her a bowl of off-brand cornflakes, added milk that would expire tomorrow, watched her eat with the focused intensity she brought to everything. His work uniform hung on the back of the bathroom door, navy blue with his name stitched over the heart in fading thread. Marcus Cole, HVAC technician. He'd been fixing air conditioners for 6 years, ever since the architecture firms stopped returning his calls and the license renewal fees became another bill he couldn't pay. Georgia Tech, class of 2009. Graduated with honors, loans he'd never finished repaying, and dreams that died slowly enough he'd barely noticed. He dropped Maya at school at 7:15. She kissed his cheek, grabbed her backpack, the cheap one from Walmart that all the other kids would recognize, and ran toward the playground without looking back. Brave, like her mother. Sharp, like her mother. Learning the world's rules faster than he wanted her to. The first job was a busted condenser at an elementary school across town. He spent 2 hours in a mechanical room that smelled like mildew and neglect, replacing a part that should have been replaced 3 years ago. The principal stopped by to check on him, friendly enough. "You're always so reliable, Marcus." "Just doing the job, ma'am." She smiled, that particular smile white women gave him when they wanted to prove they weren't racist. He smiled back, the smile he'd learned to give, and went back to work. Lunch was a gas station sandwich eaten in his truck, parked behind the school. He pulled out his notebook while he ate, not the work log, the other one. The one with building sketches in the margins, structural calculations he did for no reason except they kept his mind sharp. He'd been drawing buildings since he was Maya's age. His grandfather used to say he had an eye for it. James Virgil Cole, born 1919, died 1998. Laid tiles for 40 years, worked construction jobs that broke his back, and never broke even. Marcus had been 12 when the old man died, but he remembered the hands, scarred, massive, gentle when they ruffled his hair. "You got a gift, boy. You make something of it." The afternoon job was residential, a McMansion in Buckhead where the HVAC system cost more than Marcus's truck. The owner hovered while he worked, asking questions that weren't really questions. "You been doing this long?" 6 years, sir." "Learn it in school?" "Mostly on the job." "That must be interesting work." Code for, "I'm surprised someone like you can do technical work." Marcus had stopped getting angry about it somewhere around year 3. Anger was exhausting. He just fixed the system, collected the check, drove away. Traffic was murder heading back across town. He sat in it, radio playing something forgettable, and thought about the bills on his table. The math that didn't work. Maya's school shoes that were too small. The slow grind of trying to stay afloat when the current kept pulling harder. His phone buzzed. Unknown number. He almost didn't answer. "Mr. Cole?" "Speaking." "This is Jennifer Wright, Miss Ashford's assistant. She asked me to reach out and thank you for your help last night." Last night? It took him a second to place it, the roadside, the flat tire, the woman who'd looked at him like he was dangerous until she needed him not to be. Just helped her change a tire. No thanks necessary. Miss Ashford would like to see you, if possible. She's sending a car. I'm working. She'll compensate you for your time. That phrase landed wrong. Compensate. Like his time wasn't worth anything unless someone with money said it was. He almost declined. But the rent was due, and Maya needed shoes, and pride was a luxury he couldn't afford. When? This evening, 5 o'clock. The car will pick you up at your home address. She had his home address. Of course she did. People like her always knew more than you wanted them to. I'll be there. The Rolls-Royce Phantom arrived at 4:58, black and gleaming like a threat. The driver stepped out wearing actual gloves, opened the rear door without speaking. Marcus had showered, changed into the one pair of khakis he owned that didn't have paint stains, put on the shirt he saved for funerals. Still felt like showing up to a knife fight with a spoon. The interior smelled like leather and money. Seats so soft they felt obscene. The driver pulled away from the curb without asking where they were going, which meant he already knew, which meant this whole thing had been planned before Marcus said yes. They drove through Atlanta's southern sprawl toward Buckhead, past neighborhoods that got nicer in increments, then in leaps, then into something else entirely. Gates appeared, private roads, hedges trimmed with precision that suggested gardeners, plural, full-time. The houses stopped being houses and became estates, pillars and porticos, and the kind of manicured lawns that whispered generational wealth. The Ashford mansion rose at the end of a circular drive that could have fit Marcus's entire apartment building. White stone, 3 stories, windows tall enough to make a man feel small. He stepped out onto pavement so clean it could have been used in surgery. The butler, because of course there was a butler, led him through a foyer that made churches look humble. Marble floors, crystal chandelier, portraits of ancestors in military dress staring down with expressions that suggested they'd never worked a day that left their hands dirty. Miss Ashford will see you in the drawing room. Drawing room. Marcus had to stop himself from laughing. He followed the butler through corridors lined with art that probably cost more than he'd earn in his lifetime, into a room with floor-to-ceiling windows overlooking a garden that looked like it had been designed by someone who'd never needed to worry about water bills. Claire Ashford stood by the window. Navy dress, heels that added 3 inches and probably cost more than his monthly rent. Her hair was different, pulled back, professional, but he recognized the face. The woman from the roadside. The one who'd almost called the cops before realizing she actually needed help. You came. You sent a Rolls-Royce. I figured it was important. She almost smiled, gestured to a chair that looked too expensive to sit in. He sat anyway, careful not to touch anything he didn't have to. I owe you more than thanks. Last night, I misjudged you. You thought I was going to rob you. I thought, she paused, choosing words. I made assumptions based on my skin color. She flinched. Yes, at least you're honest about it. I'm trying to be better, which is part of why I asked you here. She moved to a side table, poured 2 glasses of something amber from a crystal decanter, handed him one. He took it but didn't drink. Didn't trust what happens when poor men accept drinks from rich women in drawing rooms. I have a problem, and I need your help again. This time I can actually pay you. What kind of problem? My father is hosting a dinner tomorrow night. Investors, media, family, friends. He's trying to finalize a business merger and arrange my engagement to a man I can't stand. Old money, good image, the usual garbage. What's that got to do with me? I told him I'm seeing someone serious. I needed to stall. He called my bluff. Now I need to prove it. The pieces clicked. Marcus set the glass down untouched. You want me to play your boyfriend? Just for one night. Show up, make him believe we're together, make him uncomfortable enough to back off. He always does when the image is threatened. So I'm shock value. Her jaw tightened. You're a challenge to his narrative. He thinks he controls everything, everyone. Showing up with you, someone he can't categorize, can't dismiss, it disrupts his power. You mean showing up with a black man disrupts his racism? Yes. She met his eyes, didn't look away. I know how that sounds. I know what I'm asking. But I saw how you carried yourself last night. You didn't flinch, not once. That matters. What do I get out of this? Payment. Whatever you think is fair. He almost laughed. Almost. Because what was fair? What was fair compensation for being used as a prop in someone else's family drama? For walking into a room full of people who'd look at him the way Claire had looked at him on that roadside? And? She hesitated. There's an opportunity. I'm acquiring a property, the old Ashford Grand Hotel downtown. Historic building, 1912. It needs a complete overhaul. HVAC, electrical, structural work. I need someone to lead the technical redesign, someone I can trust. The Ashford Grand. Marcus knew it. Everyone in Atlanta knew it. The beautiful corpse at the edge of the historic district, boarded up since the 90s, rotting while developers fought over its bones. Why me? Because you helped me without asking for anything. Because you clearly know your work. And because... She paused. Because I need to start making decisions that aren't about maintaining my father's version of the world. He studied her, looking for the lie, the angle, the moment this would turn into another humiliation. But her eyes stayed steady. Scared, maybe. Desperate, definitely. But steady. I don't trust you. You don't have to. Just help me take back one night of my life. The silence stretched. Outside, the garden fountain burbled. Somewhere in the house, a clock chimed. Marcus thought about the bills on his table, the $62 in his bank account, Maya's 2 small shoes, the slow drowning of trying to keep his head above water when the world kept adding weight. I'll think about it. The dinner's tomorrow night. Then I'll think fast. He stood. She stood. For a moment, they just looked at each other. 2 people from different worlds, both trapped in systems they hadn't built but couldn't escape. If you do this, she said quietly, I'll make sure the hotel project is yours. Contract, title, everything. No strings. He nodded once, turned to leave. The butler materialized to show him out, because of course rich people had staff who appeared when needed, like furniture with a pulse. The Rolls-Royce drove him home in silence. Marcus watched Atlanta scroll past the tinted windows. His city, her city. The same geography, but different planets. Back at his building, the driver opened the door. Marcus stepped out onto cracked pavement, air thick with the smell of hot asphalt and somebody's barbecue. Inside, Maya was at the kitchen table doing homework. His neighbor, Mrs. Chen, retired, widowed, the kind of woman who still believed in community, sat beside her. How was work, Marcus? Long. Thank you for watching her. She's an angel. We made cookies. Maya beamed, chocolate on her chin. He paid Mrs. Chen $20 he couldn't spare, locked the door behind her, sat down across from his daughter. How was school? Good. We learned about Martin Luther King today. Yeah? What'd you learn? That he talked even when people didn't want to listen. She said it so simply, like it was just a fact. Marcus felt something catch in his throat. He was brave. Like you, Daddy. He wasn't brave. He was tired. But he smiled anyway, ruffled her hair. Let's get you ready for bed. He tucked her in at 8:30, read her 3 chapters of the library book they were working through, kissed her forehead. She was asleep before he made it to the door. He stood there, watching her breathe. This perfect thing he'd helped make. This person who deserved better than $62 and a father who fixed other people's air conditioners. Back in the kitchen, he opened his laptop. Searched Ashford Grand Hotel history. The results came fast. Photographs from the opening in 1912, society pages from the 20s, jazz clubs in the 30s. Then the decline. Sold in 1987, closed in 1994, boarded up ever since. A dozen developers had tried to save it, all failed. He zoomed in on a construction photo from 1942. Black and white, grainy. A crew of men laying tile, faces barely visible. Something about it tugged at him. He squinted at the image, tried to make out details that had been lost to time and low resolution. His phone buzzed. Claire Ashford. Have you decided? He stared at the message, at the photo, at the bills still covering the table, at the door to Maya's room where his daughter slept believing her father was brave. His thumbs moved. Yes. Her reply came instantly. Thank you. Car picks you up at 6 tomorrow. Suit will be delivered in the morning. He set the phone down, closed the laptop, sat in the dark kitchen with the hum of the old refrigerator and the distant sound of traffic, and wondered what he'd just agreed to. Tomorrow night, he'd walk into Jonathan Ashford's world. A world that had never wanted him, had spent centuries making sure people who looked like him stayed outside. He'd do it for money, for opportunity, for Maya's shoes and next month's rent, and the chance that maybe, just maybe, the door would stay open long enough for him to walk through. The suit arrived at 7 in the morning, delivered by courier in a garment bag that probably cost more than the suit inside. Marcus opened it, found charcoal gray wool, Italian label, fit so perfect someone must have guessed his measurements with eerie precision. Shirt, tie, shoes, belt, cufflinks, the whole costume. He showered, shaved, put it on. Looked at himself in the bathroom mirror. The suit transformed him into someone else. Someone who belonged in drawing rooms and Rolls-Royces. But underneath, he was still Marcus Cole. Still tired, still one paycheck from disaster. Maya knocked on the door. Daddy? You look fancy. Got to go to a work thing tonight. Will you be home for bedtime? Might be late, baby. Mrs. Chen's going to stay with you. Okay. She studied him with those sharp eyes, too smart for 7. Are you nervous? A little. You'll be good. You're always good. He knelt down, pulled her into a hug, tried not to think about what would happen if this went wrong, if Jonathan Ashford decided to make an example of the black man who dared show up uninvited. The Rolls-Royce arrived at 6 exactly. Marcus kissed Maya goodbye, told Mrs. Chen he'd be back by midnight, stepped into the car. The driver said nothing. They drove toward Buckhead as the sun turned Atlanta's buildings to bronze. Claire met him at the mansion entrance, emerald dress that caught the fading light, hair down, makeup subtle. She looked different, less guarded, more human. You clean up well. You say that like you were expecting me not to. She flushed. I'm sorry, I didn't mean... I know what you meant. He followed her inside. The mansion was transformed. Flowers everywhere, staff in formal wear, moving with choreographed precision. string quartet playing something classical in the ballroom. Through the windows he could see guests arriving, luxury cars forming a procession up the drive. Claire took his arm. The touch was performative but not entirely fake. Just stick by me. Speak only when you want to. Don't let them get in your head. What about your head? I've been in their heads my whole life. Tonight I'm trying to get out. The guests filled the grand salon, 200 people who'd never known want, never counted dollars, never chosen between electricity and groceries. They turned as Marcus and Claire entered. The conversations didn't stop exactly, just stumbled. Eyes found him, cataloged him, moved to Claire, back to him. Doing math that didn't add up. A woman in pearls approached, smile bright and brittle. "Claire, darling, and who is this?" "This is Marcus Cole." "How lovely." The woman's eyes scanned him like a barcode. "Are you in finance?" HVAC. "Oh." The word came out sharp, surprised. "How interesting." She drifted away. Another couple materialized, asked similar questions, got similar answers. Marcus felt their assumptions like weight, that he was hired help, that Claire was slumming, that this was some kind of social experiment destined to fail. A server offered champagne. Marcus took a glass he wouldn't drink, just to have something to do with his hands. "Is he your new trainer?" someone asked, voice pitched to be overheard. "How articulate he is," someone else murmured, the compliment a weapon. "Did you do work on the house?" A third voice, assuming he couldn't possibly be a guest. Claire handled each one with icy poise, redirecting conversations, ignoring implications, her arm steady through his. But Marcus felt the room's judgment like temperature, the way they smiled without warmth, spoke without curiosity, looked at him like he was fascinating in the way zoo animals are fascinating. Then Jonathan Ashford appeared. He moved through the crowd like royalty, tall and silver-haired, face carved from expensive marble. People parted for him without being asked. His eyes found Marcus, held, measured. Then he approached with the deliberate walk of someone who'd never had to hurry for anything. "So, you're the man who changed my daughter's tire." He extended a hand. Marcus took it. Firm grip, dry palm, 2 seconds exactly. "That's me." Jonathan's smile was all teeth and no warmth. "Interesting choice, Claire. Very progressive." "Marcus is more than you think." "I doubt that." Jonathan's eyes stayed on Marcus. "But let's see." Dinner was announced. The crowd moved toward the dining hall like an organism. Claire guided Marcus to their seats, long table beneath a ceiling mural of angels and warships, place settings that could have fed a family for a week. Marcus sat. Claire sat beside him. Jonathan sat directly across, positioning deliberate. The first course arrived, something small and artfully arranged that Marcus didn't recognize. He watched the others, copied their movements, survived. The interrogation began during the soup. "What do you think about corporate mergers, Marcus?" Jonathan's voice carried, designed to be heard by nearby guests. Heads turned. "I think they usually benefit the people already on top." Unique perspective. "No, realist." Jonathan's smile tightened. "And how did you and my daughter meet?" "She had a flat tire. I helped." "How gallant." Jonathan sipped wine. "And what's your end game here? What do you want from my daughter?" The table went silent. Forks paused. Conversations died. Everyone waiting. Marcus set down his spoon, met Jonathan's eyes. Respect. The word landed like a stone in still water. Claire's hand found his under the table, squeezed. Jonathan's expression flickered. Surprise, maybe, or something harder to name. The meal continued. Courses arrived, were consumed, disappeared. Conversations restarted around them, but Marcus felt the attention, the way people watched him without seeming to, the way his every movement was catalogued and judged. By the time dessert arrived, he was exhausted, not from the food or the questions, but from the constant performance of existing in a space that didn't want him, of being polite to people who decided he was lesser before he said a word, of watching Claire navigate her own family's contempt with practiced grace. Jonathan stood, tapped his glass. The room quieted. To family. To legacy. The Ashford name has always stood for strength, discipline, and continuity. It's good to know our next chapter will be written with the same values. His eyes found Marcus on the word values. The meaning was clear. Marcus represented discontinuity, chaos, everything the Ashford legacy opposed. Polite applause rippled around the table. Jonathan sat, satisfied. Marcus stood. He didn't plan it, didn't think about it, just stood, the motion pulling every eye in the room. I didn't come here for a toast, but I'll say this. Claire's hand on his arm, warning or encouragement. He kept talking. Legacy isn't just about money or bloodlines. It's about what you teach the people watching you, the way you treat those you don't need anything from, the way you speak when you think no one's listening. If your name stands for anything, let it stand for that. The silence was complete. No forks moving, no wine being sipped. Just 200 people holding their breath. Then one person clapped. Then another. Then scattered applause around the table, some genuine, some scandalized, all uncertain. Marcus sat down. Claire was staring at him, eyes bright. You didn't have to do that. I know, but you needed someone to remind them. Jonathan's face was unreadable. He raised his glass toward Marcus, a gesture that could have meant anything. Then he smiled, but this time there was a crack in it, something human beneath the marble. The dinner ended. Guests migrated to the terrace for cigars and cognac. Marcus stayed with Claire, their performance continuing even as the weight of it pressed down. People approached in waves, some to congratulate, some to interrogate, all to satisfy curiosity about the man who'd dared speak at Jonathan Ashford's table. Near midnight, Claire found him on the back patio. He was staring at the garden, moonlight turning the sculpted hedges silver. Thank you. Was that enough of a show? It wasn't a show. It was the first time I felt like I wasn't alone in that room. She moved closer, close enough he could smell her perfume, something expensive and subtle. I can't undo the way I treated you that night, but I can start doing better. Then do. The project. The Ashford Grand. It's yours. Contract, title, everything. I'll have it drawn up tomorrow. He turned to face her. You sure? I've never been more sure of anything. Her phone buzzed. She glanced at it, face going pale. What is it? My father. He wants to see me. Tomorrow. Alone. That's not good. She met his eyes. He doesn't lose. Ever. He's already planning his next move. They stood there in the moonlight, the party continuing behind them, both understanding that tonight was just the opening. Whatever Jonathan Ashford was planning, it wouldn't be obvious. It wouldn't be loud. It would be calculated, surgical, designed to cut without appearing to draw blood. The Rolls-Royce drove Marcus home through empty streets. He stared out the window, still wearing the suit, still feeling the weight of those 200 pairs of eyes. His hands were shaking slightly. Adrenaline, maybe. Or the recognition that he'd just painted a target on his back. Maya was asleep when he got home. Mrs. Chen left quietly. Marcus stood in the kitchen, loosened the tie, poured himself water he didn't drink. The bills were still on the table. The rent was still due. But tomorrow he'd have a contract, a real chance. The Ashford Grand Hotel, his to rebuild. He pulled out his laptop, searched the building again, found the 1942 construction photo, zoomed in on the crew laying tile, studied the faces until his eyes blurred, wondered if his grandfather was there, somewhere in that grainy image. If James Virgil Cole had touched those floors, had left some mark that survived. The search led him deeper, archive records, historical society documents, permits and blueprints from the original construction. He found a notation dated September 1942. Renovation crew, interior work. Names withheld per segregation policy. Names withheld. Marcus stared at those words. His grandfather had laid tile in 1942. This building had been renovated in 1942. But there was no record of the black workers. No acknowledgement they'd even existed. Just withheld, like they were state secrets, like their labor was invisible. He closed the laptop, sat in the dark, thought about Maya asking if he was brave. This wasn't about a job anymore. This wasn't about money or opportunity or climbing out of the hole poverty had dug. This was about something bigger, something that reached back through 73 years to a grandfather who'd worked his whole life without recognition, who'd built things that would outlast him and never bear his name. Marcus went to bed, but didn't sleep. Lay there staring at the ceiling, thinking about Jonathan Ashford's cracked smile, about Claire's desperate hope, about 200 people who'd looked at him and seen threat, novelty, disruption, about a building downtown that held secrets in its walls. When morning came, he was already awake. The Ashford Grand stood like a wound in the middle of downtown Atlanta's historic district. Red brick darkened by decades of weather, arched windows covered with plywood that had rotted at the edges, iron fire escapes rusted orange. Marcus pulled up at 7 Monday morning, his truck the only vehicle on the block except for a delivery van unloading at the restaurant 2 buildings down. He sat with the engine running, studying the facade. The bones were visible even through the decay. Beaux-Arts architecture, 1912 craftsmanship, the kind of building they didn't make anymore because nobody knew how. 3 stories, corner lot, main entrance facing south. The marquee still hung above the doors, letters long gone but the framework intact. His phone showed the contract Claire had sent over the weekend. Lead Technical Manager, Ashford Grand Restoration Project. Salary plus percentage of completed milestones. More money than he'd made in 6 years of HVAC work. He killed the engine, stepped out into September heat that already felt like noon. The sidewalk was cracked, weeds pushing through concrete. Someone had tagged the plywood with spray paint, incomprehensible symbols that probably meant something to somebody. The front doors were chained. He walked the perimeter instead, found the service entrance on the east side. The padlock was new, key provided with the contract. It opened clean. The door swung inward on hinges that screamed. Inside smelled like mildew and thyme. His flashlight cut through darkness, found a hallway lined with torn wallpaper. Pipes ran overhead, wrapped in asbestos insulation that would need remediation. The floor was concrete, uneven where settling had broken it. Water damage stained the walls halfway up, flooding at some point, never properly dried. He moved deeper, found the main lobby, cathedral ceiling disappearing into shadows above. The chandelier hung crooked, crystals dulled by grime, but still there, still whole. Grand staircase curved up to the second floor, banister intact despite missing spindles. Crown molding ran the perimeter, plaster cracked but salvageable. Marcus pulled out his notebook, started making notes, measurements, observations, preliminary assessment. The mechanical systems would be completely shot. Electrical would need full rewire. Plumbing was probably lead. All had to go. But the structure itself, the frame and foundation, those felt solid. He could work with solid. Footsteps echoed. He turned, flashlight finding Claire in the doorway. Jeans and a white blouse, hair pulled back, work boots that looked brand new. "You're early." "Wanted to see it in daylight. What do you think?" He swept the beam across the lobby, illuminating damage and potential in equal measure. "It's savable." "Barely, but savable." She walked to the center of the room, turned slowly. "I used to come here with my grandmother, before it closed. She loved the ballroom." "Where's that?" She led him through a corridor to double doors hanging askew. Beyond was a cavern, high ceiling, wood floor warped from water damage, wall panels peeling. Windows on the west side still had glass, morning light slanting through decades of grime. The piano was by that window. She'd play while my grandfather danced with me. I was maybe 5. Her voice carried an ache Marcus recognized, the weight of places that held memory, that became more important after the people in those memories were gone. "We can restore it, piano and all." They walked the building for 2 hours. Marcus cataloged everything, every system, every structural concern, every space that would need demolition or preservation. Claire took photos, asked questions that showed she'd done her research. By 9, the first crew members were arriving. Contractors, electricians, 2 young architects from a firm Claire had hired. Introductions went around, names Marcus would forget and relearn over weeks. Handshakes, a few careful looks when they realized he was leading the project. Not hostile exactly, just surprised. He gathered them in the lobby, laid out the plan. Phase 1 would be demolition and hazmat removal. Phase 2, structural reinforcement. Phase 3, new systems installation. They'd work around the historic elements, not through them. We're not gutting her. We're waking her up. One of the older contractors, white guy, maybe 60, name badge said Ray, nodded approval. "I remember when this place was something. Good to see someone who respects it." Work started. Hammers against plaster, crowbars prying up floor sections, the building groaning as they opened it to light. Marcus moved between spaces, checking measurements, answering questions, making decisions that would shape months of work. The weight of it settled on his shoulders, not heavy exactly, but present, real. He was inspecting corroded plumbing in a second-floor bathroom when someone called his name from the lobby. The voice carried authority, wrong kind of authority. Marcus made his way downstairs, found a man in a tailored gray suit standing where the chandelier's light barely reached. The visitor offered a business card before Marcus got close enough to read it. David Price, Vice President of Acquisitions, Ashford Holdings. "We've already started. If there's a change order, talk to Claire." Price's smile was precise, practiced. "I'm not here about blueprints. I'm here about appearances." Marcus crossed his arms. "What kind of appearances?" "The kind investors talk about over cocktails. You made quite the splash at the dinner. Some found it enlightening, others not so much." "Because I spoke?" "Because you stood out." Price stepped closer, lowering his voice even though they were alone. "Look, I'm not here to fight. Just stay in your lane, Mr. Cole. Do the work. Keep the speeches to a minimum. You've got a good thing going here. Don't make it complicated." Marcus studied him. Price wasn't like Jonathan. No barely concealed contempt, no aristocratic dismissal. This was corporate threat, smooth and reasonable, the kind that pretended to be friendly advice. If doing the job right is complicated for you, you're in the wrong business. Price's smile thinned. "This project is important to the Ashford name. Don't forget who signs your checks." He turned, walked out, polished shoes clicking on old marble. Marcus stood there watching dust motes dance in the shaft of light from the entrance, feeling the first real indication that dinner party disruptions had consequences. That evening he picked Maya up from school. She climbed into the truck chattering about a science experiment involving baking soda volcanoes. He half listened, mind still on Price's visit, on the threat disguised as concern. At home she did homework while he made dinner, spaghetti from a box, sauce from a jar, garlic bread from the freezer section. They ate at the small table, her legs swinging because she couldn't quite reach the floor. "How is work, Daddy?" "Good. Started a big project today." "What kind?" "Fixing an old building, making it new again." "Like a hospital?" "Like a hotel. Place where people used to stay a long time ago." She considered this, twirling spaghetti with the focus of a surgeon. "Why'd it stop being a hotel?" "Buildings get old, baby. Sometimes people forget to take care of them." "But you're taking care of it now." "Trying to." After dinner, she wanted to show him her social studies project, a poster about Martin Luther King Jr., construction paper and markers arranged with 7-year-old precision. "We learned he talked even when people didn't want to listen." She said it with such certainty, like bravery was as simple as speaking. Marcus felt something catch behind his ribs. He was brave. "Like you, Daddy." He pulled her into a hug, held on maybe too long. She squirmed free, went back to adding glitter to her poster. He watched her work, this perfect small thing who believed her father was brave, when really he was just trying not to drown. The week blurred into rhythm. Early mornings at the Ashford Grand, crew expanding as word spread about the project, systems coming apart to reveal what needed rebuilding. Marcus lived in blueprints and building codes, making decisions that balanced historic preservation with modern requirements. The work was complicated but clean, problems with solutions, math that actually worked out. Friday afternoon, Claire showed up with coffee and a worried expression. "David visited you." Not a question. Marcus accepted the coffee, leaned against a sawhorse. "Tuesday. Told me to stay in my lane." She closed her eyes. "I'm sorry. He's my father's man. Doesn't like disruptions." "I'm a disruption?" "You're a challenge." "And they don't handle challenges well." They worked late that day, going through the building room by room. Claire knew its history in ways the blueprints didn't. Which spaces had hosted what, where her grandmother had taught her to dance, where jazz musicians had played before segregation made that illegal. Marcus listened, added her memories to his understanding of the structure. In the old storage room off the main hallway, they found the markings. Claire was photographing water damage when her flashlight caught scratches on the back wall. Not random. Letters, carved shallow but deliberate. She moved closer, traced the lines with her finger. J. V. Cole, 1942. Marcus stopped breathing. He crossed the room, knelt where she was kneeling. The letters were crude, done with something sharp during breaks probably, when supervisors weren't watching. James Virgil Cole. His grandfather. Here. You said your grandfather worked construction. Marcus couldn't answer. His hand found the wall, fingers matching grooves 73 years old. Evidence that a man had existed, had worked, had needed to leave proof because the world was determined to forget him. He was here. He built this. Claire's hand touched his shoulder, gentle. Then you're not disrupting anything. You're finishing what he started. The ache in Marcus's chest cracked open. He pressed his forehead against the wall, against his grandfather's name, and for a moment let himself feel the full weight of it, the decades, the erasure, the fight to be seen. When he pulled back, his eyes were wet, but his voice was steady. That changes everything. They sat in that storage room for an hour. Claire asked about James Virgil Cole, and Marcus told what he remembered, the scarred hands, the quiet dignity, the way he'd never complained about work that broke his body, how he'd died without a pension, without recognition, without even a newspaper obituary. He deserved better. Claire's voice was soft. Then let's make sure he gets it, even if it's 70 years late. That night, Marcus couldn't sleep. Lay in bed, staring at ceiling tiles, thinking about names carved in walls, about his grandfather working in this building, probably through the back entrance because the front was whites only, about Maya asking why buildings stop being hotels, because people forget to take care of them, but also because some people were never allowed to care in the first place. Monday morning, the school called. Maya was in the principal's office. Could he come in? His heart dropped into his stomach, visions of injury, illness, disaster. He left the worksite immediately, made the drive in 12 minutes that should have taken 20. Maya was sitting outside the principal's office, looking small and furious. No tears, just crossed arms and that expression Elena used to get when someone had crossed a line. What happened, baby? Her teacher, Mrs. Patterson, appeared, white woman, 50s, smile that probably fooled most people. Mr. Cole, thank you for coming. There was a small incident in class today. What kind of incident? Maya didn't have the supplies for our art project. I gave her some extras so she wouldn't feel left out. Marcus looked at his daughter. Is that what happened? Maya's voice was tight. She gave me crayons in front of everyone, said some kids don't have supplies at home and that's okay. Mrs. Patterson's smile never wavered. I was just trying to help. My daughter has everything she needs. If she didn't, I'd provide it. Of course. I just thought you thought wrong. He took Maya's hand. They left without further discussion, the principal calling after them about procedures and protocols. Marcus didn't stop walking until they were in the truck, doors closed, the school's judgment locked outside. You okay? Maya nodded, but her chin trembled. Why do they do that? Do what? Look at us like we don't have things, like we're broken. Marcus pulled her close, let her press her face against his work shirt. Because they make assumptions based on what they see, and what they see is skin color, not people. But you work hard. We're not poor, we're not rich either, and some people can't imagine anything in between. They sat there in the school parking lot, his daughter learning lessons she shouldn't have to learn at 7, learning that the world would make assumptions, that teachers could be cruel while smiling, that poverty was treated like a moral failing instead of a structural problem. I'm doing this so your world is better than mine, like Grandpa JV wanted for me. She pulled back, wiped her eyes. Are you building something important? I'm trying to, baby. Then don't stop. Mama wouldn't want you to stop. Her certainty steadied something in him. He started the truck, drove her home, called Mrs. Chen to watch her while he went back to work, spent the rest of the day in a fury that manifested as precision. Measurements exact, cuts perfect, every decision made with the kind of focus that came from needing control over something. Anything. The following Monday, a delivery truck showed up empty. The flooring shipment had been canceled, driver said. No explanation, just cancellation from the main office. Marcus called the supplier, got transferred 3 times, finally reached someone who confirmed. Order pulled by request from Ashford Holdings. He hung up without yelling. Yelling accomplished nothing. He gathered the crew, explained they'd be pivoting to other work while he sourced new materials. Nobody complained. They'd all seen projects get strangled by corporate interference. By Wednesday, 2 more vendors had withdrawn. Electrical supplies delayed indefinitely, HVAC contractor suddenly unavailable. The pattern was clear, surgical, designed to slow progress without being obvious enough to fight. Claire tried to run interference, but her own access was being limited. Phone calls went unreturned. Meetings got rescheduled. Her father's network was closing ranks, making it clear that the Ashford Grand project had become politically complicated. Thursday evening, Marcus called his Uncle Ray, retired city inspector, black man who'd navigated Atlanta's construction bureaucracy for 40 years, who knew where bodies were buried, both literal and figurative. They're trying to kill it quietly. Ray's voice was gravel and cigarettes. That's how they do. No loud opposition, just paperwork that never moves, permits that never clear. Can you help? I can make calls, get eyes on the permits, but nephew, watch your back. Men like Jonathan Ashford don't play clean when they play at all. Friday morning, Marcus held a crew meeting under the grand staircase, laid it out straight. They were going off script. Local vendors only, independent suppliers, cash transactions where necessary. He'd handle permits personally, call in every favor, use every relationship. We're moving forward whether they want us to or not. The crew nodded. Ray, the contractor, spoke up. My cousin runs a hardware supply in East Atlanta. Takes cash, doesn't ask questions. Perfect. Marcus looked around at faces, black, white, Latino, all of them working class, all of them understanding what it meant when corporate power decided you were inconvenient. This building stood for 70 years after my grandfather touched it. It'll stand another 70 after we're done. We just have to get there. By week's end, they'd sourced materials through back channels, established a network of suppliers who didn't care about Ashford Holdings' opinion. Work resumed, slower, more expensive, but moving. Saturday afternoon, a woman showed up at the site, late 50s, black, carrying a box of file folders that looked heavy. I'm Rebecca Thompson. Heard you're working on the Ashford Grand. Marcus wiped plaster dust from his hands. That's right. Rebecca set the box down, pulled out a photograph. The building in its prime, 1940s based on the cars visible. I've been documenting this place for 30 years. Historian, community organizer, professional pain in the ass to developers who want to pretend the past doesn't exist. She opened a folder, showed him newspaper clippings from 1942. Grand reopening after renovation. Society pages full of white faces in formal wear. Then another clipping, smaller, from a different paper. Negro workers complete Ashford renovation, barred from using main entrance. Marcus stared at the words. The article listed names, tile workers mostly. 5th one down, J.V. Cole. Rebecca watched his face. You're related? My grandfather. She smiled, lines deepening around her eyes. Then you need to see the rest. More files, more clippings, documentation of the hotel's segregation policies, the separate entrance for black staff, the restrictions on which floors they could access, photos of the construction crew, his grandfather visible in one, young and strong, kneeling beside tile heat laid. They tried to erase this history. Every time someone wanted to develop this property, I'd show up with these files, remind them what really happened here. Why? Because your grandfather couldn't walk through that front door. But maybe you can open it for everyone. They spent 3 hours going through Rebecca's archives. She'd been collecting since the 80s, interviewing elderly workers, filing Freedom of Information requests, preserving what the city and the Ashford family wanted forgotten. Every document was ammunition, proof that this building's history was bigger than one family's legacy. When she left, she gave Marcus her number. They're going to come at you harder. When they do, call me. I've got 30 years of practice fighting people like Jonathan Ashford. That night, Marcus laid the clippings on his kitchen table, studied his grandfather's face in that grainy photograph. 23 years old in 1942, his whole life ahead of him. He'd lived another 56 years, but probably never walked through the Ashford Grand's front entrance as anything but labor. Monday morning, reporters were waiting outside the site. Not many, 3 or 4, but enough. A woman approached, recorder already running. Celeste Ramirez, Atlanta Times. We heard there have been delays on the project. Any truth to rumors that Ashford Holdings is pulling support? Marcus paused, hand on the door. Thought about Price's warning, about staying in his lane. Thought about his grandfather's name carved in a wall where it wouldn't be seen. Thought about Maya learning that silence was safer than truth. The truth is that this building stood long before men like Jonathan Ashford tried to own its story, and it'll still be standing long after. Celeste's eyebrows rose. That's quite a statement. It's also a fact. The story went live by noon. Not front page, but online, shared across social media, comment section filling with support and vitriol in equal measure. Local builder challenges corporate sabotage at historic site. The headline was inflammatory enough to get attention, specific enough to sting. Claire called within the hour. My father's furious. He called it a stunt. Marcus was replacing rotted floor joists, phone wedged against his shoulder. It wasn't. It was a warning. I'm not here to be erased. Silence on her end. Then, quiet enough he almost missed it. I told him I'm stepping away. From the board. From the family business. You sure about that? They don't want me involved unless I'm obedient. I'm done pretending I don't see what they are. Her voice had changed. Not scared anymore, not desperate. Free, maybe. Or free adjacent, still finding the shape of it. Besides, I've got other plans now. Real ones. With real people. Over the next week, something shifted. Deliveries started arriving on schedule. Permits that had been stalled suddenly cleared. Marcus didn't trust it, but he used it, pushing the crew to make up lost time. The building opened itself to their work. Walls coming down revealed original tile, salvageable beneath layers of bad renovation. Structural beams proved sounder than initial assessment suggested. Rebecca stopped by twice more, bringing documents, making introductions to elderly residents who remembered the Ashford Grand in its prime. Stories accumulated. Jazz nights in the ballroom, civil rights meetings held in secret. The slow decline as highways and suburbs pulled Atlanta's heart elsewhere. Each story Marcus collected, typed up, began compiling into something bigger than a construction project. Friday afternoon, the chandelier came down. They'd been working around it for weeks, cleaning what they could reach, but the full restoration required removal. It took 6 people and a rented crane, lowering 300 pounds of crystal and iron through a space that felt too small. On the ground, Claire walked around it slowly. Her grandmother's chandelier, the one that had lit her childhood visits. Marcus watched her touch the frame, fingers gentle on metal dulled by decades. Can we save it? Every piece. We'll restore it properly this time." She looked up at him, eyes bright. "When we hang it again, I want it to be the last thing we do. The moment we know we're done." Deal. They worked late that night, just the two of them, cleaning crystals one by one. The work was meditative, repetitive, the kind of task that let conversations wander. Claire talked about her grandmother, about learning that family legacy could be both pride and burden. Marcus talked about his grandfather, about the weight of finishing work someone else started. Around 10, her hand brushed his, reaching for the same crystal. They both froze. The moment stretched, became something else. Her eyes asked a question. His eyes answered. The kiss was gentle, uncertain, both of them testing if this was real or just proximity and shared purpose. When they pulled apart, Claire's expression had shifted. Vulnerable, hopeful, scared. This complicates things. Everything's already complicated. True. She smiled, something unguarded in it. But I think I'm okay with complicated, if it's honest. They cleaned more crystals, talked less. The silence wasn't awkward exactly, just full of implications neither was ready to name. Around midnight, Claire left, promising to come back tomorrow. Marcus stayed another hour, walking the building room by room, feeling its transformation. In the storage room, he found his grandfather's name again, ran his fingers over the letters, wondered if James Virgil Cole had imagined this, his grandson 70 years later, touching the same walls, finishing the same work. Probably not. Probably he'd carved his initials and gone back to laying tile, another day in a lifetime of days where the work mattered and the worker didn't. But it mattered now. Marcus would make sure it mattered. He locked up, drove home through empty streets. Maya was asleep. Mrs. Chen had left a note about homework completed and teeth brushed. Marcus stood in his daughter's doorway watching her breathe, this 7-year-old who believed her father was brave. Tomorrow he'd tell her about her great-grandfather's name, about history carved in walls, about how sometimes the bravest thing you could do was finish what someone else started, even when the world said you had no right. For tonight, though, he let her sleep. Let himself believe that maybe, just maybe, the doors were staying open long enough to walk through. The scaffolding came down on a Tuesday, 2 weeks before the planned opening. Marcus arrived at dawn to find it collapsed across the second-floor hallway, metal pipes twisted like pickup sticks, support brackets sheared clean through. Ray was underneath, leg bent wrong, face gray with shock. Sean, the youngest crew member, sat against the wall holding a gash on his forehead that bled through his fingers. Marcus ran, dropped to his knees beside Ray, pressing his work shirt against Sean's wound while fumbling for his phone. 911 took 3 rings to answer, each one lasting a geological age. He gave the address, described injuries, heard his own voice stay calm while his hands shook. "Stay with me, kid. Stay with me." Sean's eyes kept trying to close. Marcus slapped his cheek, gentle but firm, keeping him present. Ray was conscious but breathing shallow, sweat beading despite the morning cool. The ambulance arrived in 7 minutes. Paramedics moved with practiced efficiency, questions Marcus answered on autopilot. How long ago? What happened? Any loss of consciousness? Ray onto a backboard, Sean's head wound packed and wrapped. Both loaded, doors closing, sirens starting. Marcus stood in the empty hallway surrounded by twisted metal, trying to understand how scaffolding that had been secure yesterday was shrapnel today. The fire marshal showed up within the hour, older white guy, methodical, photographing everything before he touched anything. Marcus watched him examine the support brackets, run fingers over sheared bolts, frown at findings he didn't share immediately. These were loosened. Not rust, not wear. Deliberately loosened. "You're sure?" The marshal held up a bolt, threads clean and sharp. "This came off recently. See how there's no corrosion in the grooves? It was tight last week, loose today." He continued the inspection, Marcus following. The security camera that should have covered this hallway had its cable cut, fresh cut, wire strippers clean through the insulation. Whoever did this knew what they were doing, and they knew where your cameras were. Marcus felt rage build slow and cold. Someone had come into his sight, his grandfather's building, and hurt people to make a point. The cowardice of it, the calculated cruelty, made him want to put the fist through walls. Instead, he called the police, filed a report, answered questions that felt designed to imply the accident was his fault: inadequate supervision, lax safety standards, cost-cutting that endangered workers. He refuted each suggestion with documentation, with photos from daily inspections, with the truth that wouldn't matter if they decided it was easier to blame him than investigate. At the hospital, Ray's wife met Marcus in the waiting room. Heavy woman, kind eyes, hands that twisted a purse strap into shapes. "How is he?" "Broken femur, needs surgery." She paused, swallowing hard. "We don't have insurance. He aged out of the union coverage last year." The number hit Marcus like physics. 80,000 for surgery, maybe more depending on complications. Money Ray didn't have, money Marcus couldn't provide without bankrupting the project. "I'll figure something out." Ray's wife touched his arm. "Don't you dare stop this work. He'd be furious if you let this scare you off." Sean was easier. Concussion, 18 stitches, released with instructions to rest. His mother arrived while Marcus was still filling out paperwork, a small, fierce woman who hugged her son and then turned to Marcus. "Who did this?" "We don't know yet, but you will." Her voice carried certainty Marcus didn't feel. "And when you do, you make them pay." He drove back to the site as the afternoon sun turned Atlanta's buildings bronze. The crew had gathered in the lobby, waiting. Marcus gave them the update. Ray stable, Sean home, investigation ongoing. Offered to keep paying them even if work stopped while they sorted this out. "We're not stopping." Ray's voice came from the stairwell. He hobbled in on crutches, left leg in a temporary cast, his wife supporting his elbow. "Doctor said 6 weeks minimum, but I can still supervise." "You should be resting." "I can rest when I'm dead." Ray made his way to a sawhorse, lowered himself carefully. "Someone tried to kill this project. I'll be damned if they succeed." The crew murmured agreement. Marcus felt something loosen in his chest, the fear that he was alone in this, that one act of sabotage would scatter everyone. But they stayed, not because they had to, because they chose to. That night he sat with Maya at their kitchen table, her homework spread between the bills he still hadn't paid. She looked up from her math worksheet, pencil tapping a rhythm against addition problems. "Daddy, are you in trouble?" "Why would you ask that?" "You have your worried face." He tried to rearrange his expression into something lighter. "Just work stuff, baby. Nothing for you to worry about." "Is someone trying to stop you?" 7 years old, and she could read him like headlines. He set down the envelope he'd been staring at without seeing. "Some people don't like change. They want things to stay the way they've always been." "Even if the old way was bad?" "Especially then, because change means they were wrong. And people hate being wrong more than they hate being cruel." She considered this with the gravity she brought to important questions, like whether dinosaurs and dragons could have been friends. Are you going to quit? No, baby. I'm going to finish what Grandpa JV started. Good. She went back to her homework, the subject apparently settled. Marcus watched her work, the small, fierce thing who believed her father was capable of anything. He needed to be worthy of that belief. Wednesday morning, a silver Lexus pulled up to the site. Brendan Sutherland stepped out, investment banker polish from haircut to wingtips. Marcus recognized him from the dinner party, Claire's ex-fiancé, the man Jonathan had wanted her to marry. He crossed the sidewalk with the casual confidence of someone who'd never been told no. Marcus Cole, I've heard a lot about you. He extended a hand Marcus didn't take. Brendan's smile didn't falter, just withdrew the hand like the slight was expected. I'll get to the point. Walk away from this project. I'll clear your debts, all of them. $60,000 for your late wife's medical bills, plus $100,000 bonus. Clean exit. Marcus felt the number land, felt its weight. 60,000 would erase the shadow that had followed him for 4 years, the collections calls, the damaged credit, the constant calculation of which bill could wait another month. 100,000 would be Maya's college fund, security, breathing room. He thought about Ray in a hospital bed, about scaffolding deliberately loosened, about his grandfather's name carved where no one was supposed to see it. You can't buy me out of my own family's legacy. Brendan laughed, the sound carrying genuine amusement. Your grandfather laid tiles. You're not royalty. You're help. The words were designed to sting, to reduce James Virgil Cole's lifetime of labor to something dismissible. Marcus felt his hands curl into fists, force them open. Then I'll be help who finishes what he started. Tell Jonathan Ashford I said no. Brendan's expression hardened. You're making a mistake. This neighborhood will gentrify. You'll be priced out anyway. Take the money while it's offered. Marcus turned his back, walked toward the building, heard Brendan call after him about consequences and regret, heard the Lexus door slam, engine start, tires on pavement. Only when the sound faded did he let himself lean against the doorframe, forehead against old brick, breathing hard. Claire found him there 10 minutes later. One look at his face and she knew. Brendan came, offered me $160,000 to walk away. Did you? No. She sagged with relief. Thank God. I was afraid. I'm not here for money. I'm here because my grandfather's name is on that wall, and nobody remembered to write it down anywhere else. They stood in the morning sun, construction noise rising around them. Claire's hand found his, squeezed. I'm with you. Whatever comes. Over the next week, deliveries resumed their reliable schedule. The sabotage investigation went nowhere. Police filed it as vandalism, no suspects, case pending. Ray's surgery got scheduled through a charity program Rebecca connected him with, some of the cost covered, rest to be worked out later. The building slowly revealed itself again, walls stripped to studs, systems exposed like anatomy. Saturday afternoon, a black SUV arrived carrying men in suits, too nice for a construction site. They fanned out, photographing everything, taking measurements, conferring in low voices. The lead approached Marcus with a tablet and credentials that identified him as Preston Holdings, National Development. We are prepared to offer $8 million for the property. As is purchase. Close in 30 days. The number was obscene. $8 million would transform everything, pay every debt, fund Maya's future, let Marcus breathe for the first time in years. He could walk away clean, tell himself he'd done what he could, that sometimes money won. I'm not the owner. Talk to Claire Ashford. We have. She referred us to you as project lead, said the decision was yours. The tablet showed renderings, the Ashford Grand converted to luxury condos, heritage elements stripped, history erased. Boutique hotel branding, rooftop bar, gym in what used to be the ballroom. Everything his grandfather had touched buried under marble and chrome. It's not for sale. The developer's expression didn't change. $8 million is a generous offer, Mr. Cole. Think about your daughter's future. I am. That's why I'm saying no. They left business cards, promised the offer would remain open, drove away in their SUV. Marcus stood holding expensive cardstock, feeling the weight of the choice. He could give Maya everything: best schools, college without loans, security that would last generations. All he had to do was let history be erased one more time. He tore the cards in half, dropped them in the construction dumpster. That night, Maya found him on the fire escape outside their apartment, the Atlanta skyline glowing against dark sky. She climbed through the window, settled beside him in her pajamas. Mrs. Chen said a man came asking about you today. What man? Fancy car. Wanted to know if we were moving soon. Marcus felt ice in his stomach. Did you talk to him? Mrs. Chen told him to leave. She was scary. Good. He pulled Maya close. Baby, some people are going to try to make things difficult for us, but we're not going anywhere, okay? Because of Grandpa JV? Because of Grandpa JV. And because some things matter more than money. Like what? Like knowing you did right by the people who came before you. Like teaching your daughter that the world doesn't get to decide what she's worth. She leaned against him, small and warm and trusting. The city hummed below them, millions of people living millions of lives, most of them invisible to each other. Marcus wondered how many of them were fighting fights like his, small, private, against forces that had all the power and none of the accountability. Monday morning, Rebecca showed up with two people, elderly black couple, both leaning on canes, moving with the careful deliberation of bodies that had worked hard and paid the price. Rebecca made introductions. This is Mr. and Mrs. Patterson. They both worked here in the 50s. Mrs. Patterson's eyes swept the lobby, tears forming. Lord have mercy. I didn't think I'd ever see this place again. You worked here? Housekeeping. 23 years. Her voice carried the South's music, vowels stretched long. Mr. Patterson was maintenance. We met changing sheets in room 314. Her husband smiled, gaps where teeth used to be. Couldn't use the elevator. Had to take the back stairs. But we didn't mind. Had each other. Rebecca pulled out more files, employment records she'd obtained through Freedom of Information requests, proof that dozens of black workers had kept the Ashford Grand running while being barred from its public spaces. Names, dates, positions, wages that were legal robbery. I want to include this in the heritage exhibit. Show who really built this place. Marcus looked at the Pattersons, at Rebecca, at the building around them. The scope of the project was expanding beyond renovation into something closer to resurrection. Not just saving a building, but reclaiming its truth. We'll need more space for the exhibit. Use the old ballroom. Claire had appeared silently, listening. My grandmother would have wanted that. Over the next 2 weeks, the building transformed in accelerating bursts. New electrical systems went live. HVAC began circulating clean air. Plumbing carried water without lead contamination. The ballroom floor was sanded and refinished, wood gleaming like honey. Walls got repaired, painted, restored to approximations of their 1912 glory. Rebecca coordinated the heritage exhibit, collecting oral histories from elderly workers, scanning photographs, creating timeline displays that trace the building's history through both its splendor and its shame. The exhibit didn't flinch from truth. Segregation policies, labor exploitation, the slow erasure of black workers from official records. But it also celebrated resilience, community, the people who'd built something beautiful despite being told they didn't belong inside it. Marcus worked 18-hour days, sleeping on a cot in what would become the manager's office, existing on coffee and whatever food the crew brought. Maya visited after school most days, doing homework in the lobby while construction happened around her. She'd claimed a corner where she could watch the chandelier being reassembled, crystals cleaned and rehung one by one. "When's it going back up, Daddy?" "Last thing we do, when everything else is ready." "Why last?" "Because that's how you know you're finished. When the light comes back." 3 weeks before opening, Jonathan Ashford arrived unannounced. No entourage, no suit, khakis and a polo shirt, civilian clothes that made him look older somehow. Marcus found him standing in the ballroom, studying the heritage exhibit's preliminary installation. "You included everything. The truth doesn't need editing." Jonathan turned, face difficult to read. "I underestimated you. I thought you were opportunistic, using my daughter. I was wrong. People make mistakes. Some mistakes have consequences. I've spent my life building a legacy, but I built it on a foundation of exclusion." Jonathan moved to the exhibit panel showing employment records, his father's signature on policies that enforced segregation. "My daughter walked away because I taught her to value image over integrity. She was right to leave." Marcus waited, letting silence do its work. Jonathan pulled an envelope from his pocket, handed it over. Inside was a cashier's check, $2 million, made out to the Ashford Grand Heritage Foundation. No strings, no control. It's yours to steward. Scholarships, community programs, whatever you think honors the people who built this place. Why? Because I want to make amends. And because I want my daughter to speak to me again, though I know that's not something you can give. Marcus studied the check, the number almost incomprehensible. $2 million would fund the scholarship program Rebecca had proposed, would ensure the building's maintenance for years, would give kids like Maya opportunities their grandparents never had. "I have one condition. You attend the opening, you listen to the stories, and you acknowledge publicly what this building represented during segregation." Jonathan met his eyes, nodded slowly. "I can do that." After he left, Claire found Marcus still holding the check, staring at numbers that could change everything. "Is it real?" "I think so. I think your father is trying to become someone different." She took his hand, their relationship still new enough to make the gesture feel significant. People can change, if they want to badly enough. The final 3 weeks accelerated into chaos, finishing work happening in parallel, inspections scheduled and passed, furniture delivered and arranged. The heritage exhibit took shape in the ballroom, photographs and documents mounted on walls, audio stations where visitors could hear elderly workers share their memories. Rebecca worked with tireless precision, making sure every name got recorded, every story preserved. Marcus barely slept, the weight of finishing pressed down, not just the construction deadlines, but the knowledge that this mattered beyond profit or career. He was completing work his grandfather started, opening doors that had been locked for 73 years, making visible what the world had tried to hide. Thursday night, 1 week before opening, he sat with Maya in the lobby. The building was quiet for once, crew gone home, just the two of them and the unlit chandelier hanging overhead. "Tell me about Grandpa JV again." "He laid tiles, worked construction his whole life. Strong hands, quiet voice. Never complained, even when things were hard. Did he know you'd do this? I don't think so. He died when I was 12, before I knew I'd become anything. But you did. Become something. I'm trying. She leaned against him, 7 years old but somehow older, carrying understanding beyond her years. When we turn on the lights, will he see? Maybe. If there's a way for people who've passed to see us, he'll see this. Good. I want him to know you finished it. Friday morning brought the final inspections: fire marshal, building inspector, health department, historical preservation commission. Marcus walked them through, answered questions, presented documentation. Each signed off, stamps and signatures making it official. The Ashford Grand was safe, compliant, ready. That afternoon, the furniture arrived for the guest rooms. Beds, dressers, chairs, everything coordinated to match the building's historic character while meeting modern expectations. Maya helped arrange pillows in room 314, the room where the Pattersons met 70 years ago. Saturday was rehearsal, staff trained, procedures established, systems tested. The hotel would open with 20 rooms available, expanding as demand required. The cafe had been leased to a local bakery, the ballroom reserved for community events. Everything designed to serve the neighborhood that had preserved the building's memory when developers wanted to forget. Sunday morning, Marcus woke on his cot, looked around the manager's office, realized this was the last time he'd sleep here as construction lead. Tomorrow he'd be director of operations, the job Claire had created when the project succeeded. Salary that would let him move Maya out of the apartment above the hardware store, give her stability, breathing room, the kind of childhood where she didn't have to count dollars. He found Claire in the ballroom, adjusting exhibit panels. She looked up, smiled with exhaustion and triumph mixing. Ready? For what? Everything that comes next. Monday morning dawned clear and bright. September warmth without summer's brutality. The red ribbon stretched across the main entrance, 500 folding chairs arranged in rows facing the podium. Media vans arrived early, setting up cameras, reporters checking equipment. The crowd gathered, city officials, clergy, neighborhood residents, the crew that had rebuilt the building, elderly workers who'd kept it alive in memory. Rebecca stepped to the microphone as the crowd settled, her voice carrying practiced authority. Ladies and gentlemen, the man who restored not just this building, but 73 years of dignity. Applause rose. Marcus walked to the podium with Maya beside him, her hand in his. He'd written a speech, abandoned it, decided truth needed no script. This building has a long history, some of it painful. His voice caught, steadied. Maya squeezed his hand. In 1942, my grandfather, James Virgil Cole, laid tiles here. He couldn't use the front door, couldn't eat in the dining room, but he carved his name in a wall, a small act of defiance. He was saying, I was here. I mattered. Remember me. 73 years later, I'm standing at this podium, not because I'm special, because he was. The crowd was silent, completely focused. Marcus felt the weight of their attention, the responsibility of speaking for people who'd been silenced. This building witnessed segregation, witnessed civil rights meetings held in secret, witnessed decline. Now it witnesses rebirth. And this time, everyone walks through the front door. His voice broke on the last words. He didn't try to hide it. Maya tugged his sleeve, held up the ceremonial scissors. Together they cut the ribbon, the fabric falling, the crowd erupting into applause that felt like more than politeness, like recognition, validation, the acknowledgement that this mattered. People surged forward, tours beginning, the heritage exhibit filling with visitors. Marcus watched elderly black men and women move through displays, reading their own names on employment records, seeing photographs of themselves, young and strong. Some wept, some laughed. All of them touched the walls like they were coming home. In the ballroom, Jonathan Ashford stood before a panel showing his father's signature on segregation policies. Claire approached tentatively. They spoke in voices too low to hear. Whatever was said, she didn't walk away. Small step. Not reconciliation, but maybe the beginning of something like it. The Pattersons found the plaque in room 314. In memory of all the workers who built the Ashford Grand, especially those barred from enjoying what they created. Mrs. Patterson pressed her palm against it, lips moving in silent prayer. By afternoon, the hotel was alive, guests checking in, cafe serving coffee, jazz quartet playing in the ballroom. Everything Marcus had imagined during 18-hour days and impossible math, made real through persistence and people who chose to care. Maya pulled him to the storage room, to the wall where his grandfather's name was carved. The letters had been preserved behind protective glass, label identifying James Virgil Cole, tile worker, 1942. "We did it, Daddy." He knelt beside her, both of them facing evidence that a man had existed, had worked, had mattered enough to leave proof. "We did it, baby." 6 months later, Atlanta's spring arrived with dogwoods blooming and humidity returning. The Ashford Grand was thriving, 85% occupancy, heritage tours booked weeks out, the James Virgil Cole Legacy Scholarship funding 12 students. Marcus had moved Maya to a better school, rented a house with a yard, started sleeping more than 4 hours a night. Claire ran the community outreach program, relationships with her father slowly thawing through monthly dinners that were still awkward, but less hostile. Their relationship had deepened past crisis bonding into something steadier, though neither rushed to define it beyond partnership and whatever came after. Rebecca had published a book documenting the building's history, using it as a lens to examine Atlanta's broader patterns of segregation and resistance. The Pattersons came to book launch, sat in the front row, held hands like they'd done for 70 years. Saturday afternoon, Marcus drove Maya toward the coast. Weekend trip to celebrate the end of second grade. They took Highway 85 south, the same route he'd driven that September night, helping Claire. As they approached the spot where it happened, Marcus slowed. A car sat on the shoulder, hood up, hazard lights flashing. Young black man stood beside it, maybe 20, phone pressed to his ear with the frustrated expression of someone getting bad news. Marcus pulled over. Maya looked at him. "Are we stopping? What do you think we should do?" "Help them." He parked, approached with hands visible, face friendly. The young man, Andre, he introduced himself, relaxed when he saw Marcus wasn't threat or police. "Alternator died. Tow truck says 2 hours minimum." "I can take a look." Marcus popped the hood, diagnosed the problem, explained it wouldn't be an easy roadside fix, but he could give Andre a lift to the nearest town, help him arrange the tow. Andre hesitated, clearly weighing stranger danger against being stranded. Maya leaned out the window. "My dad helped someone here before. That's how he met my new mom and found Grandpa JV's name and saved a whole building." Andre's eyebrows rose. "For real?" Marcus laughed. "She's not wrong." They got Andre sorted, tow arranged, ride to town provided, phone numbers exchanged in case he needed anything else. Before he got out, Andre turned to Marcus. "Why'd you stop?" Marcus thought about Jonathan Ashford's dinner table, about speeches and scaffolding and names carved in walls, about Claire on a roadside, about his grandfather laying tile, about Maya learning the world's rules. Because someone will need help tomorrow. When they do, you be there. Andre nodded slowly, understanding landing. I can do that. Marcus drove on, Maya settling back with her book, the highway unspooling toward ocean and vacation. In the rearview mirror, the Ashford Grand glowed on Atlanta's skyline, distant but visible, its lights a beacon saying, "We were here. We mattered. Remember us." The radio played something forgettable. The sun turned clouds to copper. Maya asked if they could stop for ice cream, and Marcus said yes, because there was money now, because small joys were allowed, because his daughter deserved a world where help was given freely and doors stayed open. He thought about legacy, not the kind built on exclusion and power, but the kind built by people who showed up, who finished what others started, who carved their names where the world tried to hide them. His grandfather had laid tiles. Marcus had restored the building those tiles held together. Someday Maya would do something neither of them imagined, carrying forward the refusal to be erased. Legacy isn't what you leave behind. It's what you build into the people who come after. The highway carried them south toward beach and rest, and the future that unfolded, one choice at a time. Behind them, Atlanta held a building that remembered, that bore witness, that opened its doors to everyone because one man had refused to let history be forgotten. The Ashford Grand stood, would keep standing, not despite what it had been, but because someone finally told the truth about it. And in a storage room behind glass, carved in wall where no one was supposed to see, 3 words remained. J. V. Cole, 1942. Proof that a man had been there, had worked, had mattered. The light that never quite went out.